Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you for joining us on this special roundtable. As we normally do, I'll just start with a very brief introduction of what we've got on for today. Can everyone see the slides? Yeah, okay, fantastic. So thanks everyone for joining. We've got quite a number of guests, probably the most number of guests I've had. So hopefully my skills would be tested today in terms of chairing, but alhamdulillah, we'll see. We start as we normally do, just for a reflection from the verse in the Quran. And the ones that kind of struck up to me was this verse in chapter 4, where we talk about changing the creation of Allah or changing what God has willed for us. And this verse in chapter 4 is often used as the reason for maybe going against some of the, especially with the gender identity movement, maybe changing the body to maybe something that it wasn't designed at the start. So it's an interesting verse to ponder upon, and yes, so that's chapter 4, verse 119 and 120. So just to give a very brief introduction for who we are, what we do. A lot of people join us, they don't know what we do. We're peer support group for Muslims who have conflict in sexual or gender identity. We don't believe in a label. We don't believe in a particular sexual identity. And the only thing that we kind of focus on is what we call God centricity. So we look at how we could be more God-centric in our lives. The services that we provide include, they're open to all. So a lot of people ask us, are they just open to Muslims? No, they're open to all, as we recognize that there is very limited support in this area. We have free consultation. We have weekly support circles, which are on Zoom, and you can see there are a variety of circles there for men, women, and parents as well who are going through this. We also provide referrals as well as one-to-one coaching, and our webinars are free. They're open to the public, as we see there's a big need within our community to discuss this topic, which perhaps it is not easily available, or the resources are not there at present. That's a very brief introduction for us. So getting to the main cause of today, I'm really happy that we're joined by an esteemed range of panelists. And every panelist in their own right has contributed hugely to what we're discussing today. We have Dr. Stewart, who's an academic and a journalist, and actually we'll got a screenshot of one of the current articles that's been published recently in the Herald, which is a very interesting article to have a read. So I'd encourage people to have a look for that. We're also joined by Dr. Julie Maxwell. She's a pediatrician, a school governor, and a church youth worker. And I think there's a lot of being a general synod member, and I think even a trustee of Family Education Trust, which do really good work. So we're very happy to have her with us. I can see Sheikh has joined. We have Dr. Sheikh Ramsay, who I've known for a while. He's the director at the Oxford Islamic Information Center, and he was actually one of the people in the panel with the Women's and Equalities Committee to directly speak about this issue within the Muslim community. So we're very happy to have him with us. We also have Dr. Mike Davidson. Mike has been with us before. He's a familiar face, and as well as being the chairman of the IFTCC. We're so happy that he is here and can share his expertise. Is his subject matter for sure. And we're very pleased as well to have Richard O'Dare, who can, as a barrister, and as well as people who probably following the Kirsty Higgs, at least I am, the legal case, as well as picking quite difficult cases in the current sphere of things where we're kind of in an identity war and an identity politics. So it's very helpful to have him join us as the legal side of things, because I think we were definitely lacking that. And actually, we also have Sheikh Fadl, who's joined us. Sheikh Fadl has supported strong support right from the start. He is a Quran translator. He's the director of Bridges Foundation, as well as a lecturer. So a warm welcome to all the panelists, and I really thank you all for sparing your Saturday afternoon for this. So just a few things in the news just to get us starting. So as I mentioned, you can find our panelist Stuart's article on the Herald. I think it was probably recently republished. And what I think what's interesting of this issue is that we need to see it from a human rights lens. Sometimes we see it from a faith lens, and it isn't that. So many people come up to us and they're of no faith, and they're just looking for options, and they're saying the only option I have is now in a faith capacity, because it seems that type of option, if is not available, or if I go to a counselor and I say, you know, I want to go a different trajectory from maybe LGBTQ identity, then you find that there isn't a lot of support which is available. So it's a human right choice, and I think that's really important that we do see it as that. In terms of some of the efforts that faith communities have done, and I think they need to be credited for that. So we have Sheikh Fadl, who's with us, who helped us to have a letter which got signed. We have Dr. Sheikh Ramsay as well, who's a signatory to this letter, which we posed to Mike Freer, the Minister of Equalities, to say that there was a lot of concern in what legal support would look like. I think everybody understands what harm is, or at least we'll kind of discuss that. But what does that mean for good support? What does good support look like in terms of this? And I think this is a very valid question to be asked. Similarly, we have Dr. Julie, who is part of the minister's consultation, and that was a huge. I think there was about over 5,000 signatories to that consultation, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 3,000 or 2,500 were ministers. Again, a very, very huge response to this, and we had that confirmation that Christian teachings are not affected in this ban. But again, we still don't know. There's no legislation yet, so we still don't know where the line is on that when they've promised that. And then we have Dr. Mike Davidson, who has helped build an international declaration. And for those of you who haven't still checked out, you can go to the IFTCC page, you can go to the declaration, and you can see that the declaration is signed by a variety of groups. There's a diverse variety of signees over there. And I think it is important that we do take an international approach to this. There has been attempts, there's a coordinated attempt to kind of look at this internationally. So I think it's important that we do look at this from an international lens and learn from legislation which is in Canada, maybe it's in Australia, and see what, if that legislation is good legislation, let's review it and see whether it is fair and legal and equitable. And that's what we want legislation to be, to prevent harm. So yes. And then finally, we have a legal perspective. I know Christian Concern have done that with Roger Kiska, in that they've given a view that a badly written law could infringe on Article 9 of the European Convention Human Rights. So, and that's why I think a lot of us are concerned of that. So that's a whistle walk tour of where we are at the moment. And I'd like to kind of start by looking at what is conversion therapy. So I have to explain this term every time. I don't know if I still understand it myself, but I would like to open up to the definition. I guess the way, it might be the easiest way to do this might be through, I can call out, but I cannot, if you also want, you can raise your hand as well, just so I know that you want to answer that, and we can go through it from that lens. So yes, I'm going to open up to the panel, and I'm going to say, what can anybody define conversion therapy? Stuart? Yeah.
Yeah, I think basically conversion therapy is a propaganda term. I was just looking, there's a thing you can look at on Google called Google Ngrams, which traces the use of a term historically. So historically, in books, the term conversion therapy appears to have first emerged in the early 1960s, but then was hardly ever used until 1995, when it suddenly began to rise very rapidly, and then again in the 2000s, very rapidly again. And essentially, conversion therapy for me is a propagandistic term used to try and demonize beliefs and traditional beliefs, and to suggest that even conversations or prayer and so on with gay people or trans people or people like this who think that they're gay or trans or whatever, that's what it is. So I'm quite surprised, or although I shouldn't be, at how easily this has been adopted and then introduced in law, because it's not really a neutral term at all. It's a kind of ideological term used to try and represent something in a profoundly dangerous and negative light, which is, I think, quite illegitimate and quite problematic. And it shouldn't really be a term that's used in law, because it's essentially propaganda, in my opinion.
Thank you so much for that propaganda indeed. Dr. Sheikh Ramsay?
Yes, Good afternoon, all. Of course, I hope everybody's from UK. I'm not very sure everybody come from UK when they're going to meetings. They come from all over the world. God bless you all. Thank you, my brother Ali, for inviting me. As I mentioned when we were talking to government, first I said I'm supporting the steward on what you said, but the conversion therapy, the name is wrong. Like a therapy, Islamophobia, like axis of evil, which they give something. For example, they say, for example, in the world, Iran has axis of evil, and what they do, they demonize the people, and Islamophobia as well. There is a reversion. It is not a conversion. A person which, for example, 6 months or a year, the conversion is from something to something, not coming back. Is a reversion, and I said this is a wrong word you are using. And of course, as you know, as the steward said, of course, they are trying to demonize. And they're very successful on that. Because if you say conversion, everybody gets upset. If you say reversion, it's no problem. That's what they are trying to do, is propaganda against it. And they are, again, I said, they are winning and huge things supporting it. And if you say one word, of course, as the imam or as a representative Muslim in UK was at that time, and of course I said I'm reading the what the therapy is. There is not a therapy. They're just reading. And the example I give him many examples as well. Example, the people who turn from the being LGBTs or gay to turn to be a Christian, a person which he reverted back to the Christianity, which was with me, nothing at all in Islam. However, what they using the word is wrong, has been a stick, like Islamophobia, for example, which I said is a very complicated, these words are. However, we can change it. Maybe later I've got some proposal to see how we can do it. Otherwise, you are standing in front of or we are standing in front of the wall, which impossible to the barrier, impossible to go through. Therefore, what we need to do, we need to think about it, how we can change that is become benefit and completely demolish and squash the therapy and put a different name to it. And there are ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Julie.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, of course, most people that are, a lot of people who would say, oh, yeah, there should be a ban on conversion therapy. Of course, what they think it means is electric shock therapy and all the terrible things that, of course, we would all disagree with, but that haven't happened for many, many years and are already illegal. And so, so most people don't understand what the proposed ban is going to ban, and the word therapy, some of what they want to ban is therapy, but a lot of what they want to ban is not therapy. It's just talking about things, it's praying with people, it's, discussing and exploring. So, the whole term conversion therapy, for so many reasons, for all the reasons that have already been said, it's such a misleading and wrong term that the government can't even define. So they can't. How can they ban something that they can't even define?
Absolutely. No. Thank you. Thank you for that, Dr. Mike.
I just wanted to add that I think it's important to recognize the work of Dr. Douglas Helderman, who in 1991 certainly reintroduced the term conversion therapy. He's an APA psychotherapist, quite a high-ranking member of the APA. And interestingly, the term was often used alongside reparative therapy. But in the late 2000s, around 2017, I think, reparative therapy was in fact legally trademarked. And then you saw a backtracking away from the use of reparative therapy. It's not often, I mean, it is sometimes still equated, but activists, I think, have wised up. But Douglas Helderman is key. He's, of course, the editor of the book that came out this year, the case for conversion therapy. And that's an important volume to look at from the opposition side of view. But I wholeheartedly agree with what's been said. This is a pejorative term. It's politically motivated. And I would say it's a kitchen sink term. Everything is chucked into it. And if somebody wants to make a point, well, they just chuck it into the mix. It's very, very disturbing.
Thank you. So yes, so in terms of the definition, I guess the opposition may say that they've renamed it to conversion practices, and now they use this term. And I guess the latest definition of conversion practices is an act which is intended to change, repress, or modify sexual behavior or gender identity. And the government is also putting in the clause of coercive practices in this, and it's the coercion. I would like to go to Richard, if it's possible, to take his views on if we are legislating on a practice, and then if we include therapy as, I guess what they're talking about is very, very directive therapy, where the therapist is telling the client, or an act which is directed at a particular group of people. Is it possible to have a definition which encompasses harm, legitimate harm, and isn't, as Mike's saying, a sink term for anything and everything? Do you think that that is possible? And do you think that the government or the government should be looking at a very tight definition of that? Yeah.
I think that I found it very interesting to hear you read out the recent definition of conversion practices, and to note the words which were obviously missing, which are without the client's consent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you put those words back in there, you don't wholly solve the problem, but actually it seems to me everything turns on, and there's a systematic attempt to avoid the question of why people should not seek such assistance if they want to. I mean, it's simple as that. Coming back to the definition of harm, I think I'd want to say, first of all, that as far as I'm aware, and I am moderately aware, and Mike may help me on this, there is no significant evidence that talking therapy in relation to sexuality creates a huge risk of harm. Bearing in mind one thing, and I was totally gobsmacked by this statistic when I read it, that all therapy, pretty much all therapy, carries a risk of harm. I believe the figure is about 15% or something, because most therapy involves looking back at people's lifetime difficulties and influences, and you are, to put it simply, opening Pandora's box, but you do it in the hope that actually at the end of the day, it will be worth it. So I don't think there's much to be said for framing a definition around harm, firstly, because there is no significant evidence of it, and secondly, because many talking therapies involve a risk of harm, so it just doesn't help at all. But above all else, the real questions here are about client autonomy. Mm-hmm. And why shouldn't people access particular types of therapy if they want to? That's what I want to say on that.
Thank you. I think we'll go to next topic in a bit. I'll take a few comments from Dr. Sheikh and then Stuart. Sheikh Ramsay, would you like to go first? Oh, you're on mute.
I agree with some Richard says, of course, but what I went to yesterday, of course, to the one of the website called Gay Times, and I read it what the MPs they say. MPs are very important. The government is very important, and if they say, we may not change it. Of course, on the matter of the adult, still be able to consent therapy, which has been, he says, which has been widely condemned by the health expert, such as National Health Service and the World Health Organization, with only those under the 18 being fully protected. That means, of course, protected under the LGBT. They protected these children under the LGBT, not under the in general. This comes back to the issue of the consent. Again, says added conservative MP Elliot Colburn, who is also a member of the petition committee, says, can someone, that's for the Richard, can someone actually consent to having harm done to themselves, even if they have all the facts? For me, he says, for me, the answer is no. Again, that comes back to the core point, which is that these are apparent practice, harmful practice, and that cause people to have undergo years of the psychological therapy to try to get over what has been done to them, which is why they need to be banned. That's what Elliot says. Another thing, we got exactly the same. These are very important, which we have to note, because we are against the mountain, as I said. Conversion therapy, another MP says, is really harmful. The Labour politician added, that was conservative, now the Labour politician added, it damaged people's mental health. It even drive people to take their own lives. That's why this debate is so important. And I hope that the Tory MP will listen and will put pressure on the government. But ultimately, conversion therapy is abuse, and you cannot consent your own abuse. So we got to keep fighting this. These are we are against. Is a very important. These we are against. There are, again, at the end, I propose something which we can do, which become absolutely right. Now, these are against, and of course, we know the government is a leading the LGBT in the world. They do not want to back the conversion, or while they are trying to groom with the television, with the radio, with the fun and the parades and the colors and that, all grooming. Not only the children, I know as old as a 65, 70 with the 8. I mentioned that in the parliament as well. With the 8 grandchildren, she says, I am confused what I am now. These are happening now. These are happening 65 year old grandchildren. You don't know anything, sex gone. Well, when you're 65, 67, 6, still she says, I'm confused, because they see, and these are the grooming which they do. That means it's the therapy which they're using in television. We got many actors, many people on a sport. You know, many people on sport, many in the police, many in the government, politician, many in the, of course, you name it. A couple of days ago, Dame Kelly was coming here and saying that, you know, after 30 years, why he says, because nothing was happening. How come forward and you know, do the reversion, do the conversion, and do the grooming.
Yes.
These are the happening. Therefore, we need to think very positive and in the way how we can tackle these. And after that, we can sort out. And I'm sure, I am 100% sure, we can change the name of the therapies and do the best for them. While we are united. They are
Mhm.
absolutely united, absolutely the LGBTQ
Yes, they are.
united to convert or
Mhm.
to groom, I call it, not convert, not groom all through the television, radio, whatever you want to see, you can see. All the parade is so fun. You say, oh God, I tell my son, of course, I don't want to take a time. I tell my son, this is not good to ladies together. He says it's fun. Well, he's a Muslim. He's a praying as well. And it's fun. They're having fun. That's you're not putting to them people's fun. People's mind is a fun if you are two girls or two boys or what together. I rest my case.
Thank you. So that goes on to our next topic, and you've talked about it now, is about regulated docking therapy. So thank you for mentioning the Gay Times article, which basically says, that we have to listen to the other side. We have to listen to what Elliot is saying. So Elliot is saying that, people who undergo these type of therapies are left with incredible harm, which then means they have to take further therapy, which is gay affirmative therapy, to then offset the harm which has happened. And this is the argument that we're hearing. So I guess the question is, in regulated, talking therapy, we have two types of therapy. So we have an affirmative approach where the client comes in and you are affirming their worldview and you're affirming what they're saying. And then also in regulated therapy, you have explorative therapy where maybe the therapist is not going against the client will, but challenging or maybe exploring other options, and especially when we're talking about a vulnerable group or even under 18s, where that if not adults, as children, we go through a questioning time, or we go through, kind of a identity, who are we, who am I, and allowing an affirmative only approach or an exploratory approach. And it's also important, I would say, okay, so what does this mean in terms of exploratory therapy? Can you still be affirmative in an exploratory therapy? So that's what I'd like to ask. Stuart, would you be able to answer that?
Yeah, well, I'll just come back on, excuse me, the prior issue, which might move in this sort of direction. I mean, I understand what Sheikh's saying there in terms of grooming, but at a certain level, I would say that's fine, right, in terms of if people are promoting their lifestyle, right? I support gay rights. I've campaigned for gay rights for 35 more years, and I think that people have a right to argue for a free society where gay people are treated equally, and I think that people have every right to promote their lifestyle. What I don't think society should have is an institutionalization of an ideology which says that if you do not agree with this, then you should be punished. And that's essentially what's happening. So this is happening in schools, it's happening in universities, it happens now through this process, potentially through law. And that's a form of authoritarianism, where you basically determine what beliefs are acceptable and are not acceptable. And I think the important thing in terms of harm, and this is where it gets very difficult, I think, because this is the winning argument today, is what's happened over the last 30 years is that society has shifted from having essentially liberal categories to a new type of liberalism, which is almost the opposite. So the idea of tolerance today, tolerance historically meant you tolerate people's freedom of ideas, whereas tolerance, that's what it was historically. Today, the idea of tolerance means you must respect difference. And if you don't respect difference, i.e. if you say something that doesn't respect it, you might be arrested and it might be described as a hate crime. And essentially what's happened is we have shifted from an idea of the human as being robust and having strength to the idea of the individual as vulnerable. And once that is accepted in the framework and in terms of institutions and law, then we're in serious trouble, because what it means is those vulnerable people or protected groups, and of which there are many, now need to be protected by the state. They need to be protected by human resources. They need to be protected all over the place. And this is the discussion now, is that it's emotional vulnerability and emotional harm. And almost anything can be emotional harm. And that's where the argument essentially lies, as they say, this is harm, this leads to suicide, emotional harm, and so on. And I think that category can be unpicked, because what emotional harm means is so broad now. Historically, when you were talking about people with emotional problems, you would talk very specifically about people who had depression or manic depression or serious mental health problems. Whereas now emotional harm essentially means that you feel bad, that it's something upsets you, you don't like something. And this is the sort of, this then steamrolls through the idea that people can express different beliefs and ideas, because different beliefs and ideas can harm you, right? And this is why it's so dangerous, and it's so important that these bills are challenged. And it's very, very worrying that almost nobody is challenging them in their entirety. People challenge the transgender aspect, but people tend not to challenge the gay aspect. But essentially, this, as other people have said, is a new form of blasphemy law, which punishes people and criminalizes people for having certain beliefs and ideas through this idea of emotional harm, which is hung on the idea of the vulnerable individual and the vulnerable group. And as long as we have that, I can't see a way of stopping it at the minute. It's just more and more of this type of legislation, which is introduced, which basically creates a more authoritarian society where the state, it's the job of the state has become to protect the vulnerable. That's the essence of the state today. And it's an incredibly dangerous thing. And it's infantilizing, as Richard O'Dea was saying there, this idea that, well, where's without consent? So now an adult can't even decide for themselves that they want to talk to somebody about their sexuality. I mean, that's authoritarian to them as much, and even more so, arguably, than it is to the people who are doing who are conversing with them.
Thank you. Definitely a new form of liberalism and a new form of definition for emotional harm, as you're saying. Richard, would you like to?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I warmly agree with and was full of admiration for what Stuart was saying. I think he nailed the problem in many ways entirely. I would say, however, that there are seeds of hope. There is a line of human rights jurisprudence under Article 10, which is extraordinarily clear that if a person is upset by what another person is believing or saying, that is no reason to restrict that person from saying it. And there was a fabulously helpful recent case in the High Court called Miller, in which Mr. Justice Knowles spoke about the tendency of the transgender movement to label homophobic anybody that doesn't agree with them. And he was very forceful about that. But that, as Stuart says, that concept, which is deeply embedded in human rights law, is under threat, not least by the government's stated intention to withdraw from the ECHR, but that's another story. The other thing that I want to mention in this regard is an absolutely extraordinary incoherence in the animal/beast that we're dealing with. On the one hand, we are told that people under 18 simply can't evaluate for themselves whether they wish to have particular types of talking therapy and so on and so forth, because it might harm them in the sense that Stuart very helpfully points out. And at the same time, 2 doors down the public policy corridor, the government is proposing to, or has allowed young people under pressure from the transgender movement to consent to the most staggeringly harmful bodily practices on any definition of harm. And it seems to me that that is a fundamental incoherence. And it does seem to me to be likely to lay the basis for a human rights challenge to any legislation that comes out, depending on what they do about identity issues. But it seems to me to flag up an incoherence which later commentators and historians will look back on and say, really? I mean, really? There we go.
Thank you. I think you've raised an important point, as well as Stuart, which talks about under 18s. So just to clarify, the current legislation will not allow under 18s, even if they're willing and they're consenting, as you said, to have explorative therapy for sexuality, yet it does allow them seemingly to take puberty blockers or maybe get in the line for surgery at some point. You know, at least it seems it's like that. Sheikh Fadl, would you like to come in at this point?
Hi, everybody. I will talk for less than 3 minutes, but I beg you to lend me your ears and your hearts and minds, then send me your advice on how to deal with this troubling case, which came to me recently. A 14-year-old boy who grew up with a single mother. His father died when he was very young. And by the way, both him and his mother are non-religious. The boy started to struggle with an unwanted same-sex attraction. He went and he disclosed this to his mother. His mother told him that she accepts him as a gay if he decides to live the gay life, even get married to a man in the future. But the boy cried and said that he doesn't want that. He said, I don't want this same-sex attraction. My dream was to marry someone like you and have a normal family where I will be the father and my wife will be the mother, and I hope that she becomes a good mother like you. She told him that the therapy will be banned very soon and that it will be impossible for her to find him a therapist. So the boy threatened to take his life. If she doesn't find him a therapist, he said, I will take my life, because he knows, and he met people who struggled with unwanted same-sex attraction before and went through some sessions and some psychotherapy and got rid of it and developed opposite sex attraction and got married. And some of them are now, they posted their stories on the internet. Some of them are now grandfathers. So can the government find a solution for cases like this? What's the number of children who should take their lives before the government understands that this ban is coercive? Are we going to let this boy and his likes take their own lives? We were told that the therapy failure leads to suicide. Then also the therapy ban leads to suicide. Isn't this ban a coercion? Are we a free society anymore? So the boy asks, isn't gender fluidity a two-way flow, or does it has to flow only in a single direction? So if you can please advise me on how to deal with this case. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I will, Dr. Mike has his hand up. I don't know if he would like to respond to that, or anybody else in the panel. I'll give Dr. Mike a chance.
Well, certainly, you know, much truth out of the mouth of that young man. there are therapists, credible therapists, who are in a position to help such a young man. And that illustrates the point that lots of work has been done around suicidality on the one side, but not on the other. There is no research that I can find in the UK that has ever looked at those who are formerly LGBT. We've done all sorts of other research. The 2017 National Strategy refused to allow anybody who was not presently LGBT identified to be able to express themselves in that survey, which meant that any person who had experienced benefit from therapeutic interventions was automatically barred. It's like studying marriage by only speaking to divorcees. It's just absurd. Yeah. So lots of sympathy to that young man and to his mother. And I'm sure Ali will be able to point them in the right direction, as I'm sure I could also. One thing I wanted to say in relation to the whole harm narrative is I want to suggest that this is very much a part of the strategy. My fear is that there is often no corroboration in harm. Harm is self-proclaimed. It's often to a journalist, often an undercover journalist. And there is no reporting of harm necessarily to a psychotherapist or to the police or to any other significant, to a GP. It's just all of a sudden out there. It's not investigated. And therefore, it's often, it's surely inadmissible. We only hear about harmful cases in the media. They absolutely refuse to talk about the success of these interventions. So we're dealing with a great deal of imbalance, I think, very well illustrated by the story that Sheikh Fidel has just mentioned.
Thank you. Sheikh Ramsay?
Yes, thank you. Of course, it is a stories. My brother, which we see many come to me as a imam or sheikh. They come many to me with these problems, but we can't say at the moment on the line. However, when that's a different thing. However, when I was talking to the panel of the ministers and of course with the 8 or 9 MPs, which they were dealing with that convention therapy. 35 page of the document they gave to me to read. Of course, I don't know that much about it. I'm theologian, not of course a political, and this is turned into political and theological and whatever. 30 page, the person who should write it down, he said, we will do it. No matter what you say, we will do it. It's there, you can see everything. And I told them, of course, everything was there. He said, we will do this. That means no matter what you say there, I'm going to do it. Which, of course, somehow I influenced a few. I remember when I was speaking, four of the MPs supported me. And of course, it came to the things that what you're saying. Of course, the therapy, I said, I do the therapy for them. If they come, they will come. My therapy is not a therapy of the, of course, we were Christian and Muslim sitting together. It's not the same. We speak, we read from the Holy Book. And you can't ban me to read the Holy Book. I'm in the middle of a street, I'm reading the Holy Book to all. Do you want to ban me to read? This is exactly the same as Ali read at that time. I read, for example, to somebody's if they come. As exactly nothing else is happening. And I gave them the example, many examples which the people came to us. And of course, it doesn't need to be through the theology, need a little bit of a support. They don't need to be just a theology, for example, say, here you are getting that and whatever, exorcism. Exorcism, the Christianity does not do it. But the person was there, you believe me, the lady was leading that. It was there behind me, and of course, in came front, and she's a. We were talking about politely, but of course, I can say she's vicious on that. And he said, I am 40 years, 35 years, they torturing me, that, and everybody was sympathizing with that, and they forgetting me. Do you understand what I'm saying? These are the way which they do. However, what we can do, we have to be allowed to. I have to be allowed to, if the father come, if the mother come, if the family comes to talk, say, my child is like that, I talk to them. I talk to them. Sometimes they say my child doesn't pray, and I talk to them. And this is exactly the same, more or less is the same. What I said again, it is a huge thing which we're going, pandemic going forward. Pandemic going forward, which everybody's wants to, at the moment, there is, nobody says, oh, he's a gay, is going forward. They're just going, many people coming and going. No, he's LGBTs, or he hasn't got that. The person come with the whole dress and the lipstick and with the beard, going forward. Nobody look. It's so huge, you know what I'm saying? It's nothing surprising. Therefore, what they're trying to do, they are trying to cut everywhere that no person have a right to come back. And if they want to come back, they want prisoner. You understand what I'm saying? If you come back, for example, you change your name to from the Adam to the whatever, you are going to be in prison. Therefore, they do not want to, because they're working very hard, and there are ways. I am a Muslim missionary for 40 years. With all respect, of course, I convert many, revert, or the people calling it revert, 1,000, maybe more they come, and they all love it. They come and go, because I give service. It's not I'm converting them. I show, I give the service to these people. They love to come. It's not I'm forcing them. They say, I love to see it, and I say, okay, here you are. This is a book. This is a book. This is a book. Read. Yes. And we have to go exactly like that to win. And I tell you how we can go, which we can.
Thank you. And I think you've raised a good point in terms of people have a variety of identities, and they have the option to leave those identities. So even if we look at it from a faith perspective, people have the complete authority to leave their faith and be supported in leaving that faith. So, and that'd be true for any other identity that anybody chooses. But as you've rightly said, what we're finding is that it almost becoming that this identity has become so untouchable that if you do speak against what they think is a homogeneous LGBTQ, but they're not homogeneous. They have, there is, as with any identity, there is differences of thoughts and opinions in that, but they look at it as a homogeneous group. And if you're an individual and you have a different view, that view isn't supported, or it's deemed hateful, or as I think Stuart mentioned, it's hate speech if you talk about leaving a certain identity. Dr. Julie.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on the topic of counsellors and therapists, because I think it's already, even without a ban, it's already incredibly difficult to find anybody who's willing to explore issues of gender and sexuality with young people. There are so few people who are just willing to do it because they're afraid of being accused of conversion therapy. Even schools, teachers, even parents, that people are terrified to do anything but affirm, because they're told that if they don't, the child's going to commit suicide or whatever. And I think this conversion therapy ban is just going to make it worse. And and young people, I think, are afraid to even raise some of these issues now, because they know people won't want to talk about it, and they don't want to get people into trouble. And it just leaves young people being very, very vulnerable to harm. This talks about conversion therapy being harm, but actually I see that this is going to cause massive harm to young people, that, you know, the young people that I want to help, it's going to be increasingly difficult to help them. And that's really, really sad.
I tell you, of course, I'm sorry, my apology, I'm barging in. Is a very important. Couple of days ago, of course, we find out they wrote somebody wrote to me, but they knew. They said drag queens teaching in the libraries with the young children. That's what's there. If you Google it, you will find it. And I had to go to my MP and say, why? And the government pay for it. And the drag queen says, you can, if you look at it, it says they want. They look at me as an idol, as a something to look forward to. That's what he says in there. You look at, therefore they are trying to convert them and revert them in the young ages. He is coming with all the frilly things and that and that and that, and everybody's the child love to see the color, love to see the painting, love to, and straight going and say he's right. And that is called, and I said that is called a child abuse. It is a child abuse which the government doing. As I remember, I was debating with the Richard Dawkins, and he said, "You're taking the people to the church before 18 years, before they're 18 is a child abuse." That's what he said, and I said, "Well, they love to take it." Of course, I was debating with him in the White House, the Rusi room. And I said, the people love, because they are love it every Sunday. They want to take, they got the nice thing and show. He said, no, this is a child abuse. Therefore, don't you think the drag queen taking there and showing to the little children as a 5 or 4 isn't a child abuse? You tell me. These has to be told to the government. Of course, I told to the thing, and I complained to the city council. Why are you paying for this? I can go free and talk. If I want to go, they don't let me. Look, absolutely. I'm the imam. I'm leader of all, for example, Muslim, and a leader of many other communities as well, which we are together. They don't let me, but the drag queen has to go. This is child abuse, and somebody has to answer for that. And who can do it? If I do it, unfortunately, I'm a wrong color, and they put me. I'm too old to go to prison. God bless you.
And you're absolutely right. I have friends. I actually have friends who identify as LGBT, and they say that the drag is something that they're against. So they say even members of the LGBT community come forward and they'll say, actually, early introducing concepts which children aren't ready for at that age is harmful, and that is definitely a safeguarding concern for children, definitely. At this point, I also want to open up to the audience, so you can use the Q&A function, and you can kind of put that in, and then we can put the question in or you can put a comment in, and we can put that in as well. I know there has been some comments on for us to talk about other types of identities and where those identities land. So you can interact with us in that way, and we'd like to hear your comments and your questions. So you can do that through the Q&A option. Dr. Stewart, sorry, Stuart.
Yeah, I think the sex education thing is quite interesting, because I think one of the real kickbacks against what's happening at the minute is going to come from parents, like it has in America. And there are a lot of groups on Facebook and groups. So, for example, I'm speaking at an event on Wednesday, 7 o'clock in Glasgow, outside the education offices, against the sex education that they're developing. Because sex education essentially has become unhinged, where the people that are promoting incredibly inappropriate sex education are being noticed by more and more parents who are not particularly illiberal or conservative, but just look at it and think, really, you're teaching this to my 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old? It's extraordinary. And so that's becoming an issue, as is the wider use of education for almost propagandistic purposes. So I do think that is a really important area where there's going to be a kickback against this. I thought I would just say, additionally, on the question of emotional harm, it's not just this work, but there's a book by Jonathan Haidt and Craig Liebknoff, I think it is, called Coddling of the American Mind. And what they look at is this kind of infantilization of society, and especially younger people, by treating them through the process of being treated as vulnerable all the time. And they make the argument that actually psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, and others have argued that actually this is harmful for these young people, because you essentially are educating young people to be fragile and insecure and unable to deal with difficult issues. So rather than developing a thick skin and being worldly and mature and developing character, you actually have that being hollowed out through this kind of celebration of your identity. It's a much more narcissistic type of culture, which it actually undermines young people in particular and their ability to have a kind of inner strength rather than constantly needing to be flattered and recognized and so on in society. So I think there is a strong argument you could make that actually the emotional harm is the other way around in terms of what's actually developing in society. I just finally would say I'm always worried about human rights, because human rights, as far as I can see, are not really rights in the classical sense. They're more protections. And I don't trust them. And I think we're much better off trying to defend conventional rights in terms of freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of association, all of which are being undermined by this legislation. And I think also we then have to separate the issue of adults from children, because it's clear to me, and I think to anyone that you put the argument to, that adults who consent to go and have a conversation with somebody, that you can't criminalize that. It's ridiculous. So that unless you're saying this person is not an adult, right, who has autonomy and freedom. But with children, it's different, because children don't have that, and children within families and religious groups and so on, it's a different thing. But then you have to start to develop an argument about family autonomy and the importance of family autonomy, because essentially what's being said here, because you can make arguments and you can say it's really hard for a young gay person growing up in a religious family, etc., etc. And I could agree with that, and I could say that is difficult and it's hard, and especially if they're sort of strongly against homosexuality and so on, I could empathize with that. But what are we saying? Are we saying that parents can't express their beliefs to their children? In other words, the state is now going to determine what beliefs are acceptable. I mean, this is like Chairman Mao in China. This is what we're talking about, right? It's a form of Maoism where the state determines what beliefs are acceptable within a family. Now, you might not agree with people's beliefs, right? I'm an atheist. I don't agree with Christians and Muslims on lots of things, but my goodness, I would defend them to the death, their right to have family autonomy and to express their beliefs. I mean, we're going back 500 years, before we had any sense of religious tolerance. That's where we're moving to. And it's utterly appalling that more people are not opposing this legislation.
Absolutely. And I think you put it really well in terms of, if the state does take any type of belief or any type of that, then it effectively discriminates. Perhaps what was, what they were claiming, what was happening in a very faith-based perspective, it's almost as the tables turned, and now it's that turn, and it's sad to see we're not progressing in a tolerant, as you describe, a tolerant society, which would actually be liberal, in that it would say people have differences, but it's okay to support people in those differences. So for example, in this debate, if they said, okay, we want to safeguard LGBT people, that they're not being coerced down a particular pathway, And at the same time, we want to protect children who don't identify or have a whatever different identity, could be any other identity than that, that they also have the support and, and this is standard, I guess this is standard freedom, isn't it? That you have the freedom to go where you want to go. And what you said about family autonomy is so important in that that's the core of our society, is the concept of a family and the concept of the protection which is given to both the parents and the children in terms of harm. So no, thank you for that. Richard?
Numerous things I could say really, but I agree as always, it seems, with a lot of what Stuart has to say. I think that it is incredibly difficult for us to over-exaggerate the threat posed to our children by the transgender movement. It is an existential threat. And I have no magic bullets to offer other than to say, honestly, it's worth spending our lives to fight against it, because it's going to destroy young lives if it doesn't stop. We are, on a more helpful and down-to-earth level, I'm currently involved in litigation in which we are challenging in the admin court a particular local authority, which we say is breaching its safeguarding duties by welcoming in untested transgender views and presenting them to children at a very young age.
Thank you. Just had a comment which has come through that says gender reassignment in children could be backdoor to pedophilia under child's wish should be respected. Please remember that court rules in Canada have given children the right to start puberty blockers without parental consent.
Yeah.
So I don't see why over time organizations like NAMBLA will use this as a way to legalize pedophilia. So I guess what that's saying is that any type of practice, which I guess would have consent by a child, would then be legal if gender reassignment is legal if the child, if a child subscribes or consents in that perspective.
I think there's a further side to that, which is this, that coming up in the wings very fast is a social services department, which will say to the parents of a particular child who's expressed some wish to be transgender, if you do not accept and support this, you are a safeguarding risk. That's going to happen. It may even have happened already. Julie's put her hand up. She may know about it having happened already.
Julie, would you want?
Yeah, I know of 2 or 3 parents who have already had social services involved, primarily because they are being accused of not affirming their child and therefore harming their child because they won't go along with their child's chosen pronoun and chosen identity, which in the light of the CAS review interim report recently, where that was very clear about caution needed around social transition for children, to say that a parent not allowing their child to socially transition is harmful. It just goes against what Hilary Cass is saying. So yeah, it's already a problem, already a big problem.
Absolutely, yeah. So because safeguarding will go to what the law is, and whatever the law will be, will then definitely have an effect. I think that's what we don't realize. Sometimes we talk about only therapy here, but we're seeing that legislation then has effect on all of healthcare. Social work and is a good example of that. Sheikh Fadl.
Well, I just have a quick question, actually, for the solicitors and the lawyers. Can these laws be legally challenged? Because it is very obvious that they are unconstitutional. How come in none of the 16 countries where these laws were issued lately, none took them to the Supreme Court, for example?
I think I'd want to say that there are challenges in the wings, challenges being built up. I do a lot of work with Christian Concern, who's very concerned about this issue, and we are definitely looking to make challenges. We're working with Mike Davidson on a challenge at the moment, and we are just looking at every avenue to challenge this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It may be that a challenge will be when this legislation is passed, if it's passed, for a declaration of incompatibility with the European Convention on Human Rights.
Well, you have the Muslim Concern with you as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheikh. I think Dr. Mike wants to come on that point.
Well, I was just going to say that we shouldn't lose confidence. And we should remember that legislation doesn't always work, particularly in the US. It's sometimes failed to get past the winning post. I think we should bear in mind that even though we are continually taught that the United Nations has a position on all of this, I'm not sure that it does. When you look at the position of the special representative, he was not there by a majority vote. There are at least the 53 Islamic nations that are opposing much of this. So we are continually taught to appeal to authority, to the Royal College of Psychiatrists, to all the royal colleges, to all the mental health bodies in the United Kingdom, as though every single member is signed up to this. But what we're dealing with is institutions that have been captured. And I have to believe that over time, this will unravel because it is simply not sustainable. It's not the truth. It does not represent some of the common sense. You know, the decision in 1973, I think it was, to take homosexuality out of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual in the US, that was a political decision. The therapists and the professionals opposed it, but they were outsmarted. And what we are seeing is this continuation in this country. It's been led by the Royal College of Psychologists, Special Interest LGBT group, led by the now deceased Professor Michael King. And then this somehow becomes, the authoritative position that everybody is just supposed to take on board. And I think we need to challenge it. We need to stand up very quickly and oppose these statements.
Absolutely. And I guess I'd like to, based on what you've said there, when we do have a professional ban, we effectively do at present have a professional ban on this, in that as Sheikh Fadel mentioned in that case, if you're struggling, you can't find at the moment help, which is, to put simply, explorative in letting the client decide and having the autonomy of where they want to go. Now, say that this ban does come into force, or maybe it is a very specific type of ban, which is talking about coercion and so on. How can we move forward with it? Is it a case, do you think, that we continue to kind of oppose legally, or is it a case of that we need to present something different, and then that the knowledge isn't there? How do we move forward in a way which protects effectively the people who are coming for help, right? So these are the most vulnerable people who are coming to help, and they're wanting to go a direction, and they're looking for support. And banning once and taking one ideology, whichever one you want to take, is harmful because that is effectively coercive. So how do we move forward to a vision where both sets of ideologies or viewpoints can still be embraced? And what are some of the steps forward from where we are presently?
If you allow me, of course, I think is
Sure. Of course.
Is it okay? Yes, yes, yeah. Of course, I was 100% kind of agree with. Let me see, with Richard. Richard is good to fight for it. I have been fighting for it for a number of years. I was head of the education of Muslim Council of Britain with the 3 million, of course, members, and of course one of the director of the REC, Religious of England and Wales, Religious Education of England and Wales, and I'm still, for after 25 years, on the SACRE. I don't understand. I don't know you understand the SACRE or not. That's the advisory board for the religious education. Still, I'm there and still be giving. Many times I said on the television and the radio and the debates, many, you can Google it, you will find it. I said, let the children be children. Don't bring them to adulthood. Children, 5 years, girl and boy jumping on each other. They don't know what is this. They don't know, 6, 7 years, they don't know. As soon as we say, well, this is that and this is that, they are trying to do it on a bicycle shed or whatever. This is wrong. Let the children be children. When they get 18, I don't mind if they are become to any of the choose for themselves, any genders. We respect LGBTs. We respect all of them, and we say you're 18, there is no problem, but children must be children. Let them be. I talk to the government, and of course you said the religion on the education, many times we brought it, and the government did not want to do it, but if the parents does not like to hear, for example, this matter of sexual or whatever, they can take the children, put them in the library for an hour. That's what we done several years ago, and it still is happening because the parent says, I don't want my daughter knows what is that. But they argue with me they are people. They are people. The government was arguing with me, but the people are there. The parents touching the children. They have to know. I said they have to know just enough. Not all the way which they're going. Of course, they have a right, which is what they should do. However, what we need to do, again, I said, we have to fight for the children, right of the children, as people at the moment, right of the unborn children in America. Huge things happening. I don't know, do you know or not? It was in the TV. Mm-hmm. And as the excellent, I take my hat to them. And we're doing it in this country as well, because I say, of course, I'm anti-abortion. Anybody wants to know or whatever. It is the right of the child, unborn child, or right of the children, which we have to look. 18 years old, there is no important. Now we come in second, what you said. If we come to the band and completely professionally banned it and everything, what we do, there are ways. There are ways which I done. I remember I said 1,000 converted. I done or wait. We go in there and bring him in. We have to be supporting the LGBTs. Okay, supporting the LGBTs. All we write a research. Which getting a doctor, getting a psychiatrist, they're taking a health department, taking a United Nations. All we do that, we help the LGBT. We say no problem. By this side, we open a door to anybody want to come back. He says, we support you, no problem. We support you, your father support you, your mother support you, and we help you. There is your choice. 18, I'm talking about. Under 18, that's a different thing. 18, we support you, there is no problem. But we go up and say, oh, if you didn't like it tomorrow, which I don't want to be a gay, and I hate it, and I like girls now, we got an open door. And this way, you can come in and turn in without seeing us. It can be on television, it can be on radio, it can be that, without seeing a Muslim or a Christian priest. They say, oh, doing exorcism or Muslim exorcism. No, you don't need to. We write this and we can override what they say. This is the only way. If you go against it, you go against a war, big war. You go with it, no problem. I love all the LGBTs as well. There is friends. I've got many friends in the university. I'm one of the director of universities, Imam and the chaplains of the university, and Imam of Oxford and Oxford Brooks. But all are friends. We love them. We care. We don't care about what sexuality. We care about this human is a friend, and is exactly the same. And we respect what they like. We respect what they do, the parade. I see in the parade sometime, I just bless them. I say, God bless you. There is no problem. And they say, God bless you too. What we need to do is this way. If you confront them, yeah, they put you in very bad situation. No matter if you be a Donald Trump. If I'm saying, if you go in this way, which we say, we write a book, all has been done. I'm saying the psychiatrist says it's no problem. The doctor says it's no problem. The health department says, NHS says it's no problem. It's good. And we do open one door, and we done our job, and we let the people they choose if they want to open the door and come in, come back or not. This is a bridge. We don't break all the bridges which we go forward. This is my opinion, has to be done, and it will work.
Thank you for that supportive response of keeping the door open for everybody to come in. Thank you. Stuart?
Yeah, in terms of what can be done, I'm always suspicious of the law because the law is how the new elites, for want of a better term, operate. And the law tends to operate behind the backs of the people. And interestingly, in terms of abortion in America, I'm pro-abortion. But interestingly, in America, the problem is that abortion was made into a legal issue by the Supreme Court rather than an issue that the people decided for themselves. So I actually think it's reasonable to say, actually, the Supreme Court shouldn't make that decision. I think people of the states, I'm just back from America, actually. I was in Tennessee and then in New York, very different places and very different people. And I think those people in those states need to make those decisions. And I think the spirit of liberalism dies when you rely on the law. Now, I can understand why people use the law. So the Christian Institute up here, for example, in a campaign I was heavily involved with, managed to overturn the named person legislation, which was essentially every child was being given a state guardian, for want of a better term. And that was overturned in the Supreme Court. I actually opposed them using the Supreme Court, even though I was delighted that the Supreme Court decided the way it did, because I think it's anti-democratic that essentially you're trying to use law. What I do think is important is, again, I'd emphasize schools, education, and parents, because all these issues come up. The trans issue, massively significant in terms of its promotion in schools. It also relates to sex education and other issues. And so I'm very keen. I'm trying to organize a conference in November, which will be around education, not indoctrination, where we look at all these different issues and try and get academics and campaigners in Scotland to try and ideally, I can't imagine this will happen, but I'm reading about the United States and the Wobblies and the emergence of trade unions. But ideally, I think we need new organizations to develop where people subscribe. You pay like £5, something like a group of parents and people and individuals who are concerned about promote the idea of education, not indoctrination, where they essentially want a liberal, open educational setting that is not absolutely bogged down by social justice warrior type ideology, which is where it's going at the minute. And I think there's a possibility there of actually getting something going. And that's ultimately, it's public pressure, as we've seen with the Brexit issue. Public pressure can have such a huge impact and allow people to have a genuine influence. It doesn't mean I think parents should be dominating education, but I do think when their values are basically being trashed by a new value system, which I completely agree with Richard when he says the trans question is a profound one in terms of the destruction potentially of a generation of young people. I really do think that is true. And so I think that's the possibility that I'm looking at the minute. And so, you know, we'll see. I'm always a pessimist and presume that nothing's going to get better. But I'll prepare to keep banging my head against that brick wall and see where it takes us.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, I think the abortion law and in US, which is a good example of, okay, so maybe we've appeased one group, have we appeased the other? Should we be bringing these kind of things at a law? Is law the correct tool to be using to be making decisions? We have a comment which is on the concept of gender, which concept of gender fluidity being accepted in one direction. It's already been mentioned, but it's the same also for sexual fluidity. So we're talking about gender. Yes, there's a sexual fluidity as well. Even in the gay community, the fluidity of sexuality or potential is admitted. So why ban exploring any said fluidity when even gay people choose to explore their opposite sex attractions at one point? And I think that's a good point. We actually have another question, which is from a parent. I'm gonna read this question out. My son is 17. He identifies as bisexual. He agreed on doing general therapy. As parents, we choose for him a therapist who practices conversion or reversion therapy. I'm guessing what they mean by is explorative therapy. We agreed with the therapist not to inform my son of this type of therapy. I'm worried if my son learns about this later on, it would have a negative effect. He is doing great at therapy. There's so far no talk about sexuality, but discovering who my son is as a human. Any advice? So basically you have a parent which would like the child to go in, I guess, in a certain direction. And at present, the therapy is quite general, but how much, I guess part of this might be how much influence do parents have? He's 17, so he's under 18. How much influence do parents really have in this, in picking a therapist, which I guess goes with their worldview? I guess I'm not showing if this person is paying for the therapy, or I'm guessing she is paying for her son's therapy. How much of a jurisdiction do parents have in choosing the therapy for their children?
I would like to say, of course, in this one, that's what I said before. It doesn't need to be a theologist to go forward, Christian or the Muslim. I said in general, we have to talk about the general and take the religion out of it. It is very important to do that, and of course, it is very important what the relation between the parents and the child is. How much love is there? Some child just say, for example, I'm 17, is a straight go to the police, or a straight go to the, if we go straight to the police or the school, they are going to be, the parents going to be in real difficulties. Therefore, how much love is between them, and how much care, how much a child care for the parents, it will help them to of course, maybe, of course, she wants, I don't know, help them to revert, or may stay there. I'm not very sure. I don't know what the situation and the stage is. If I knew the stage, I would have tell you, because as I said, several people come and talk. We just talk or on the phone or so, and we just guide them in the right direction, for example.
Thank you.
This is a way.
Thank you, Sheikh Fadl.
Well, I would advise her to continue with this therapist, as long as he's careful that this is only like a psychotherapy. The problem is that what has been promoted so far is that if you love what a boy looks like, then you are attracted to him. If you love your male friend, then you must be gay, which is actually not true. And we have to teach our youth that we, for example, in our religion, and I think the same thing would be in Christianity, that we love each other. We men love each other. But loving my male friend doesn't mean that I am attracted to him sexually. And here comes a lot of confusion when they go to 3 and 4 and 5-year-old and tell them that you may love your male friends, and then you will find that you're gay. That's a crime, because that's not true. He is now discovering his sexuality, and and he will discover later who he is attracted to when he reaches puberty. But before that, definitely boys will love boys as friends. So that's the main issue that we need to talk to our young people and to our children about, which is loving your friends from the same sex is normal. It is actually needed by your religion, and it doesn't mean anything sexual.
Thank you for that, Dr. Mike.
Well, I was just going to offer that I think a psychotherapist who's dealing with a child who's struggling with unwanted same-sex attraction at some point is going to have to talk to the family, that these issues are, need to be dealt with systemically. And if a parent is knocking on the door trying to tell the therapist what to do, I think there are ethical issues about that. And therefore, we have to make sure that our approach in therapy is systemic and that the whole family is involved in the therapy. That's why this is very resource intensive. That's the first thing I'd like to offer. The other thing is this. At the moment, in this country anyway, those who hold to one kind of monocultural view around homosexuality, that this is something to be totally normalized and promoted, what this is leading to is that anybody who doesn't hold the same view is being excluded when it comes to training and to professional access. And not only that, whoever wants to submit a scientific paper, well, they have to go through a similar hurdle. They have to get past those who control the resources around research in terms of who's going to award the money, who's going to approve the journals, who's going to publish the journal. It's that this one viewpoint has become the judge, the jury, and the executioner. So going forward, I would argue that we very much need alternative structures. We have to now grow up, I think, and in the sense that we need to answer the criticisms that have come against those of us who have a more conservative worldview around this. We have to ensure that we are ethically correct in our procedures. We have to make sure that we're properly trained, that we are decently accountable, and that all our systems are just as the current group model. We need to do that and more. And therefore, I would advocate an ethical framework that we can broadly hold to, that we start developing training and providing access to people who have a different point of view. Because in the end, I think what we're all saying here is where there is no ideological diversity, where everything is just this one monoculture, that is what creates the imbalance. But if there's, and I think this is what the Sheikh was saying, I think if there is ideological diversity, there won't be religious unity on this. I don't think there ever will be, but there can be scientific commonality in terms of the broad principles and some of the ethical features. And I think the more we can provide that, the better chance we have of moving away from, being locked into a system that is preventing any other view from expressing itself, and any other professional or any other scientific viewpoint from raising its head.
I think that's very important, because if we, as you said, if we have a minority view, as it seems in the professional or regulation side of standard therapy, and if the the argument is this is pseudoscience or this is quackery and so on, is that we and Mike's been as IFTCC, and the aim of that is to provide scientific peer-reviewed research which is being done on this to kind of understand a subset which has a different view, and it's about helping people who are coming this way. And I'm sure Mike knows that there's a scarcity of people who are willing to be counselors or psychotherapists or to engage in this work, not because they don't want to, but partly there isn't training. And it is possible to have training with an ethical framework which isn't a religious ethical framework, right? And I think we can agree on that. It can be a completely non-religious, secular ethical framework, which allows for a diversity of view, and then it allows for training in in that. And I think one of the things which is at least very surprising for me is that the UK doesn't have legislation for therapy. So anybody can call themselves a counselor or therapist because that isn't protected. So there isn't a law in the history of UK which has talked about therapy. And yet the first law which is coming in the history of the UK is to do with sexual and gender identity. And this kind of puts the lobby very clearly that, why is it that one type of identity is given more importance than other types of identity? And we aren't saying there isn't any harm being done, but we're saying, why are we only looking at things from one point of view? And surely, such as the rainbow flag allows diversity, and it is meant to show it's a rainbow, so it's a diversity of opinions. Why is it that this color, which is basically another diversity, isn't given the support, the training, the professional understanding for clients who are not coerced and who are wanting to go that through their own free will, whether they be under 18 or whether they be over 18? Dr. Julie.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, you know, I echo very much what Mike was saying. You know, and I think, you know, the important thing is that particularly with young people, I think, is that all of their issues should be looked at. You know, and they need the support and they need the exploration of whatever it is they're going through. You know, teenagers going through puberty, going through adolescence, you know, they experience all sorts of things. It's not just about gender and sexuality. But often it becomes all about gender and sexuality when actually there are other things. And of course, therapists fall into kind of two categories. And of course, most therapists out there at the moment are falling into the one category where they fixate on the gender and the sexuality and they don't deal with anything else. And it's very difficult to find anyone who will deal holistically with the whole thing. Because, you know, when I see a child in clinic, you know, I'm not giving my opinions on things. I will talk about evidence. I will talk about the facts. I will talk about, you know, what we know and explore what's going on in the family, explore what's going on with the child. You know, and like Mike said, we need to have ethical, evidence-based practice that enables proper support and proper help for young people and adults that are struggling with whatever mental health problem. And we shouldn't be completely fixated, particularly on the gender stuff, which, you know, seems to be it to the exclusion of everything. You know, I've had children in my area where no therapists, no counsellors will go near them because of the gender. They just say, refer them to the Tavistock. Can't deal with that. You know, and this is just a teenager who needs help.
Amazing. Yeah, I think in the absence of good pathways, as we were discussing, it usually ends up that there's only one route for, unfortunately, for most people. Stuart?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a danger that I don't like identity. I think it's just it leads to separatism, and once we go down the identity rabbit hole, we just end up with different competing rights. Whereas, at least if you take a classically liberal approach to the idea that people are individuals and that they should be treated universally in terms of these basic core freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of conscience, and so on, you have a framework for treating everybody equally and in a positive manner. And so I think it's a political battle ultimately. I don't think we're going to resolve this through science. I think it's a matter of actually establishing proper liberal values related to freedom. And the only way we can do that, as far as I can see, is to get the public to get involved in these campaigns and issues, especially around schools, but elsewhere. I can appreciate there's a legal framework and people will pursue that, and I can entirely understand why that happens. And I can understand what I think it's Mike saying about there's a sort of scientific dogma, and I think that that's all legitimate. But ultimately, to get out of this horrific situation we're in many respects, of having an increasingly authoritarian society, I think we need to get more and more ordinary people on board and pushing against what's being institutionalized. And the reason I'm interested in trying to see if there's an alternative sort of type of organizations that can be created is that I think that's the problem is when it's institutionalized. That's always when something becomes serious and a problem. And so you need to create alternative institutions. You need to create something where the kind of sense of confusion and resentment and anger about these various developments that are happening in society and in schools, it actually takes a concrete form where it's so the legacy isn't lost. You know, that concern and anger, which is the vast majority of people don't agree with these developments, I would argue, especially on the transgender issue. It needs to be concretized. It needs to take a form that doesn't go away. You know, some type of organization and institution that develops that is there. And so the next time some of this garbage re-emerges. You're already sort of 6 feet ahead. You can stand on the platform that already exists. So hopefully that's what will develop in the next few years, I hope.
Thank you. Just looking at some of the comments. So one comment's talking about the health impacts of a homosexual lifestyle. So it's talking about HIV, Shigella, and anal cancer, monkeypox. So it's I guess that comment is talking about physical ailments, or and it's interesting, I guess, in that when we talk about informed consent, right? So when we talk about informed consent in one way or the other, I guess it should be good medical practice to say, okay, if you choose that path, this is some of the pathology, which is kind of, in that. Similarly, if you choose a part where you're not acting out, maybe this is some of the pathology which you might have, and then it gives a fair choice for the individual to then decide which path or which route they want to take. Sheikh Ramsay? Oh, you're on mute, Sheikh.
There excellent information been exchanged here. That's great. One thing I tell you is that, which I believe, this is my opinion, I believe that the therapy, art therapy, or what you call conversion therapy, will be banned. Put it this way, will be banned. They call it the axis of evil, banned completely. Now what we do? The important thing is people like me, which is doing a therapy as an imam or whatever, which can come. If I do anything, I'm in prison. Then I'm not going to help. And the Christian exactly the same. I know many Christians which are working in the churches. They say we don't do it. We don't even touch it because it does not worth it. I'll go 5 years for prison for somebody which he will come back, or we go back again, or whatever. Maybe is a child, or I'm talking about 17, 18. I'm talking the child under 18 is a different situation, but I'm talking about the over 18. What we can do is very important. Set of guidance is a set of guidance. They don't need a professional therapist like me to come and read to them or other one. The set of guidance. If you like to do that, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and again is an open door. Maybe his friend, maybe he goes to his friend and said, look, I'm a gay, I don't want to be anymore gay, what shall I do? And his friend, the colleague, school going together or whatever, he can do it. He's not a professional therapist. Nobody can touch him. He says, I'm trying to help my friend, that's all. If they come to me, I'm a therapist. If you come to the churches, people, I'm a therapist. But professionals. But if you go to the friend, he says, "Hey, come to my friend, and I'm trying to help him." There is no nothing against it. Therefore, we have to have a set of guidance to help them to go forward and revert themselves. Again, I said what we are talking about at the moment. 1% of the people, which they go to the, for example, to the transgender and changing, 1% come back. Is not a huge amount. I hope it was huge. I hope it was all. I'm saying, of course, this is my religion. I'm saying, however, it is 1%, and we can help that 1%. Even if one we can save or one we can help. We are here. I am the servant of humanity, working for humanity. It doesn't matter. Again, for any kind of problem they have, we can help them. This is the way which we should go forward. Otherwise, we are, unfortunately, if we get the top of the, I don't know, barrister or QC or whatever, they are not going to win because we are against the huge government. And again, our brother Sheikh said 54 countries is a Muslim countries. They can do nothing at all. unless they come follow this government, as they doing, as they are working on it. Many of the Muslim countries, they accepting at the moment. I am part of it, which I come and talk. They accepting one by one. They accepting. I think 20 accepted already. However, God bless you. I would think a set of guidance, if we can help them, and need a professional people to guide in, not less somebody like a sheikh, myself.
Thank you. And I think that that raises the importance of, I think what Dr. Mike was saying earlier about training and guidance for everybody to know if you have someone who's questioning or not sure what is the training and guidance which is available to faith leaders or other people who may be working with children, or they're working with a vulnerable population which is looking into this and providing that. Thank you. Dr. Julie?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on the that comment about health risks, and I think it goes back to what Stuart was saying earlier about sex education, actually, because sex education in schools, it's this kind of whole sex positive thing whereby children are not told the risks of casual sex in general, whether that be same-sex relationships or heterosexual relationships, and things like, for example, anal sex is normalized, because to not normalize it is homophobic. And then you've got pornography, and you've got young girls who are subjecting themselves to really harmful things because it's being normalized, and we see in the news, don't we, about some of the rough sex and choking, and all of these things are being normalized, all in the name of not being judgmental, which kind of comes into this whole arena. So whether you're talking about same-sex relationships or heterosexual relationships, nobody is supposed to tell children what's good and what's not good, what's harmful and what's not harmful. And I think sex education has so much to answer for in all of this.
Absolutely, yeah. The sexual revolution that we find ourselves in, which seems to have no limit or no end to what is acceptable. Conscious of time, we have a few minutes before we end. Dr. Mike?
Well, I would just appeal to the need to not continue to be intimidated. We cannot be intimidated, and surely that is something that our Christian and Muslim communities can both understand, the dangers of being fearful. I think it is time to resist and to stand up and to speak the truth responsibly and carefully, but to absolutely refuse to give in. The thing is, I think probably we all support LGBT dignity. But I can't hand over heart and say it's going to be good whichever way you choose. I cannot say that. I would have to say that going into a homosexual lifestyle has consequences. And every day of my life, I'm dealing with people who didn't go very far, but are dealing with the consequences now. So this is not a neutral issue. And it is something that should engage every part of our being. Well, I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted, but I just wanted to raise that it's very important for us not to be intimidated.
Absolutely. And I think having that voice, as we've spoken before, having that alternative voice, why people choose to make the decisions that they do choose for, and why they have valid reasons, and not being scared to express those valid reasons in a society where it is becoming very difficult to have an alternative point of view. Stuart?
Yeah, again, I can appreciate the argument, and I think I might agree with it to some extent, but I'm always very concerned about the drift onto their terrain. So that's my concern about identity, for example. I think identity is what the new elites are dripping in identity, and I think it's a separatist, divisive approach. But similarly, I'm very concerned about focusing on harm, because the focus on harm is something that encourages a victim mentality and encourages experts in the state to step in. So we need to be very careful that you might think something is like homosexuality. I don't think it's harmful. You might. That's fine. You can make those arguments, but I don't think those arguments are going to defeat the people that we're trying to fight, because you'll just end up in a discussion about whose harm out trumps the other person's harm, and all you'll end up with is probably more state. So you'll be being protected by the state, but from, you know what I mean, it's just one thing after another. So again, I just reiterate, the only framework that I can see that where this can work is a liberal, tolerant society that is promoted, and to show that what is happening here is illiberal and authoritarian, brutally authoritarian, and that we are literally going back to a medieval form of rule in society, where the LGBT activists act as the kind of shock troops for the modern elites who are developing a dogma that is being enforced through these institutions. And you don't have to be a Christian, you don't have to be a Muslim, you don't have to believe in God. All you need is to believe in people's freedom and autonomy. And if you believe in that, then you cannot possibly support such a brutal piece of legislation like this.
Thank you. Dr. Sheikh Ramsay?
Yes, I agree, of course, with all we're saying. Important thing is you have to remember, use your wisdom, not a force, not that, not this. Everybody says, I'm the agreeer, I am this agreeer. We are few people, with all respect, of course. We are 15 people audience. Okay, it's important we use our wisdom. Again, I said, if, for example, if we get this guidance being written down, we look, see how many people look at it, and we go more again. We go more again. We go more again until we have. They said, look, we have 500,000 people which are done, and we need to do that, and we take it to the government. At the moment, we have no evidence. At the moment, we are the evil people which they're talking about. We are demonized. And again, one thing I have to tell you, with all respect, of course, with all respect, the blue eyes and white face is much prior to the my face. If I say something, I'm in a very much more difficulty than the other ones. And for example, with all respect, of course, we are all brothers. Stuart or Dr. Mike, this is happening. Therefore, what we need to do here, again, I said, wisdom, use your wisdom, and we can get there. If it's not, we are going to against everything. You say, oh, you're a Muslim, you're Muslim, go on, you're a terrorist, you're that. See what you're doing with the woman in the Afghanistan, see what you're doing in the Africa, Somalia, that. Here you are, they shut me down. Therefore, what we need to do, if you use the wisdom, we can get it. Otherwise, with the force, yes, you can, but again, I said the government is very powerful. I work with the government. I advise the government, advise the Lord, time to time, of course, the Lords, many Lords, I know they come and ask me question, many MPs, I advise on APPG, I advise on many kind of thing I advise, but of course, I know where I'm standing. This is very important. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. And final comments from Richard, please.
I think I just want to emphasize what Stuart said in many ways. We may come at it from different angles, but the key concept here is autonomy, really. People should have the freedom to explore things in therapy if they want to. And that includes children as well as adults. And the value of focusing on that concept is that you can, to some extent, avoid a battle of studies about harm and so on and so forth. This study shows this study shows that. I mean, I think those studies are very valuable, but I do think the key concept is a philosophical one, which is autonomy.
And yes, and thank you. And we end on that word, autonomy. And I think it's been a great discussion. We've looked at a variety of different topics in this, and most assuredly, I think all of us await the first response. We are in communications with the government, and that they're saying that they're going to publish a response to the consultation, which they haven't yet, and then they're hoping to give at least a first draft of a bill which comes to being. And hopefully we look for something which respects client or human autonomy on where we are. I'd like to thank all the panelists for taking this time out, and I'd like to thank all the audience contributions, and hopefully we see each other soon. Thank you.
Thank you.